So this week I've been optimizing a lot of my workflow, and one of them is the CLAUDE.md file. And before I could start with optimizing, I had to read all the documentation and see what the best practices are. And I've implemented most of them, probably not all, but I made it work for myself. So which one are the things that I have done that had the biggest impact? The first one is keep your context small. A maximum of 200 lines of text for your CLAUDE.md. Less is better. If you can make it like 50 lines, perfect. 100 lines, also good. 200 lines, workable, but better to keep it small. And if you go more, okay, also workable, but know that things are not going to work optimally and some things are going to be ignored. So then the question becomes, how do you get that CLAUDE.md file as compact as possible? In order to do that, I did a few things. One of them is I used the caveman scale, and I put the caveman scale in this case on full, and this way it compacts the text pretty good. So that one helped me save quite some tokens. The second one is I moved some things around. Some things shouldn't be inside the CLAUDE.md. In this case, I wanted to start a few things specifically on conversation start, or when a project, so a folder in my case, is empty with a certain type of folder. I use the FlowNext plugin to do my coding, to plan, to execute. And whenever that is initialized, it has a .flow folder inside the project. So what it does is whenever I open a project, it checks if that specific folder exists. And if it doesn't, it will trigger this specific skill, in this case, project onboard. That way I could move stuff from my CLAUDE.md file into these skills that get triggered deterministically. So that means they are more reliable and I get to remove context from the CLAUDE.md file. So that's a few things that I've done. Another one is I've started working with rules, because what the Claude documentation says is you can move context into rules. So it doesn't always get loaded in. It only gets loaded in when it's required. So that keeps your context pretty small and pretty tight. Now these rules, so you have like the CLAUDE.md, and below you have a folder called rules. And inside of there, you can have multiple files. And these files you could segment. In this case, what I've done is in the CLAUDE.md, I had some information about Xano. I had some information at Superbase. I had some information about other specific things. For example, a lot about the front end, like how to initialize and like some things that always should be there. Yeah, so what is actually the case is these rules sometimes do get loaded in and sometimes they don't. Now, if you want the progressive disclosure, what you have to do is you have to get some kind of conditionals that if they get triggered, then it gets loaded in. So what I've done for Xano in this case is if the project has Xano.io or something else related from Xano, like a specific type of folder, then it gets triggered, and only then it will get that extra file specifically about Xano in the CLAUDE.md. And if that is not the case, my CLAUDE.md file is about 80 lines long. And the same goes for Superbase and the same goes for the front end. Whenever it's not relevant, it will not get loaded in. And let me actually show you the documentation, and let me show you the specific part of the documentation where I read about this. So here I'm looking at the Claude documentation. It's code.claude.com. You have the getting started, then you have use Claude Code, store instructions and memory, and then you scroll down to the organization rules with the .cloud/rules. And in here it tells you could split it. So they do get loaded in every single time unless you have the setup rule or the pet specific rule are this one. So if the specific kind of conditionals or triggers are met, only then it will get loaded in. And the thing is, if you don't set this up, it will automatically get loaded in. So then you probably think it doesn't even make sense to split your CLAUDE.md file with this extra file because everything gets loaded in at once. So if you want to split it for a context saving perspective, then make sure you fill in this part. Very, very important. If you don't, it always gets loaded in, and the only benefit you get is that it's easier to reference and easier to manage. And to be honest, I'm not working each and every time in my CLAUDE.md. I set it up once and I review it often, but that's not on a daily basis. So make sure this is filled in. If you want to get a visual how it works, is the CLAUDE.md file is here. What you do, very simple, and you can just instruct Claude to do this, is add a folder below called rules. And then in that you can add other MD files. So a .md file is just a markdown file. And this markdown file could be about anything. It could be about security, could be about code style, it could be about front end, it could be about Xano, it could be about Superbase. Whatever you want it to be about, it could be about that. And that's how you split it. So this is the official way to split it by cloud and probably adopted by quite a few others as well. Now, what I've done is I've literally copied this page, or you can go here and you can go to the setup rules, you copy it, you give it to Cloud and you just tell it, okay, I want to optimize my cloud.md file, not my project one, but my global one. Yeah. So if you don't know what the difference is between a global cloud.md and a project cloud.md, let's say you have multiple projects. So project A, project B, project C. The global cloud.md file is the same across all of them, but the project specific cloud.md file is only relevant in the project you're working in. Let's say you're working in project B and only that specific cloud.md file is relevant in there. So you have one that's global and you have one that is project specific. They both get loaded in at the same time, but one is more for like your working style, for general lessons about your tech stack, for example, about you. And the project one are like the specific things to know, things to not forget about that project. So those two combined together with quite a few other things make up your stack that makes cloud in this case so good. So for me, this had quite a good impact. When I started, I had about 150 lines and I managed to bring it all down to about 70 lines when only the cloud.md is loaded in and on a specific tech stack. So in this case, Xano, or in this case, Supabase, about 20 lines, with Xano maybe a bit more, and with Supabase probably a bit less, get extra get loaded in. So let's say I have 70 for the normal cloud.md, I have about 30 for the Xano files. Together, that's only 100 lines. And 100 lines is perfect for a cloud.md. So a few tips: keep it as small as possible. Use the progressive disclosure. In this case, setting up the rule folder. And below that, you have the extra specific MD files. Very important. Make sure you put the paths or like some kind of conditionals on these files, because if you don't do that, they get loaded in because they have the same priority or the same hierarchy as the cloud.md file. So then it doesn't make sense from a context saving perspective to split them. So hopefully that's all clear. If it's not, let me know in the comments. I would love to make another video if you think that would help a lot. Thank you for watching and I see you in the next one.